stopping by my channel. Today we are talking cookie dough. I'm going to share with you my favorite chocolate chip cookie dough recipe. We're going to mix it up and then we are going to put it in the freezer and let it chill. I have found that when you chill your cookie dough, they bake up so much better than just making them right away. Plus it gives your cookie dough time to develop more flavor. I've also found that it's really convenient and really nice to make up batches of cookie dough, and because we're chilling them anyway, store some in your freezer for a later date. So if you have a friend stop over for coffee in the afternoon, or if your kids bring over friends or family stops by, you have something in your freezer that you can pop in the oven and they bake up beautifully straight from freezer to oven. And I'm going to show you how I store them. So let's get started with the cookie dough. I'm going to share with you my favorite chocolate chip cookie dough recipe, and it is so simple and so delicious. So we're going to start with a stick and a half of real butter. No margarine, nothing artificial or man-made, no vegetable shortening. Real butter is what we want here. So we want a stick and a half. And to that we are going to add a 1/4 cup of corn syrup. Now you can use light or dark. I had dark in my pantry, so I'm using dark today, but you can totally use light corn syrup if that's what you like. Adds a nice depth of flavor, and it also helps to keep these chocolate chip cookies nice and chewy, which is what I really love. I love a really delicious, chewy chocolate chip cookie. So, stick and a half of butter, 1/4 cup of the corn syrup, and then we're going to add to that a 1.25 cups of firmly packed brown sugar. Here's a cup. And 1/4. I'm using my stand mixer. If you don't have a stand mixer, or if you prefer, you can use a handheld mixer. We're going to put that on. We're going to use our paddle attachment, and we're going to cream the butter and the sugars. I want them to get nice and fluffy. Turn that up a little bit. I'm creaming my sugar and my butter on the number 4 setting, which is a medium setting. And you want to let that go until it gets nice and fluffy, and actually the brown sugar will lighten up a little bit when it's good to go. And I don't think I mentioned, but you want your butter to be softened to room temperature. Okay, that's pretty good. Our brown sugar has lightened up and it's well incorporated into our butter. So I'm going to scrape down the sides of my bowl. Scrape off the beater a little bit. And to that we are going to add 3/4 teaspoon of baking powder. A 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, and 2 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract. No imitation stuff going on here. quality ingredients. And also 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. I just use my pink Himalayan salt that I like, but you can use table salt. We're going to mix that together, add that to our creamed butter and sugar. Make sure it's well incorporated. And now we are going to add 1 egg, 1 large egg. Get that all mixed in. Okay, that's mixed up pretty good. Now we're going to add 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. And I use all-purpose unbleached flour. King Arthur is my favorite. It's a very high quality flour and it's an employee-owned company. I love supporting that. And we're just going to combine that. Now at this point, once you add your wet ingredients to your flour, you don't want to overmix it or you'll have tough cookies. So we just want to make sure everything's incorporated but not overdone. So you really just want it on the stir setting at this point. Okay, I'm going to scrape down the sides of my bowl just to make sure I get all of the flour incorporated. And then I'm going to add a 10-ounce bag of dark chocolate chips. Now, if you don't like dark chocolate, you could certainly use milk chocolate here. It's to taste, but I really love dark chocolate. Such a nice, rich flavor. And we're just going to combine those into the cookie dough. You don't want to mix this too much at this point. Just a few seconds is really all that you need. Okay. Okay, our chocolate chips are nicely combined into our cookie dough. And what we're going to do now, move some things out of the way here so you can see what I'm doing. Made a mess with the flour. Is we're going to prepare our cookie dough to be chilled. Now, a lot of recipes say to just chill it in the bowl, but I found it's easier to scoop out and easier to shape into your cookies if you do it right away. Now, some people say to just chill your dough for an hour or so, and that's totally fine. And some recipes don't call for chilling your dough at all. But as I said earlier in the video, I have found that chilled cookie dough makes much better cookies. They keep their shape nicely. You're using that extra time for the flavors to develop, and it's just really, really great. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to use a cookie scoop. Now, for years, I just used 2 teaspoons and laid them out on the cookie sheet that way, but I really love having a cookie scoop. And I've lined my cookie sheet with parchment paper. So at this point, we're not going to bake the cookies. We're going to chill them, so they don't need to be spaced 2 inches apart like most recipes call for. We just want them side by side so we can fit them all on one cookie sheet to put them in our freezer, so we don't have to worry about space. We're just preparing the dough for chilling. When I found this technique and found out how delicious they were, I'm not ever going back. I couldn't believe how much better the cookies were using this technique. It was just amazing. And I've done this with peanut butter cookies, oatmeal raisin cookies. This technique should work with just about any kind of cookie dough. And of course, when you do sugar cookies that are rolled out, that dough has to be chilled anyway. So, and what I'm going to do for today's purposes is we're going to pop this in the freezer and chill it for a couple of hours. I'm going to bake off a pan of them so you can see how delicious they are. And then I'm going to show you how I prepare them to store them in the freezer so I can whip some out on the fly. But I have to warn you, I busted my son eating the frozen cookie dough straight out of the freezer. So if you go to get out some of your cookie dough and realize some are missing, some of your little cookie dough balls are missing, it's probably one of your kids. Or maybe a spouse. Sneak in the frozen cookie dough. He said it was absolutely delicious eating it frozen. It's funny. Personally, I like a nice hot, freshly baked cookie straight from the oven. And see how nice using the cookie scoop makes your dough, it's really nice. They're all pretty uniform. They're not exact, but they're more uniform than using the 2 spoons method. And this recipe will make about 30 cookies. 30 2-inch cookies. A couple more here. That's about all we're going to get out of this batch. Now, I do want to say that if you use this technique with peanut butter cookies, before you freeze them, you want to roll them into balls like you do with a typical peanut butter cookie, like you're preparing them to bake them, and then do the crisscrosses on them, and they will be the normal size cookie. And then you put those in the freezer and let them freeze. And then it's different than this process in that chocolate chip cookies are just, they're going to spread out from the ball form. For the peanut butter, since you're going to be baking them straight from the oven, they'd be frozen and you couldn't do your crisscross process. So make sure you do your crisscross process if you're going to use this technique for peanut butter cookies. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to pop our cookie sheet in the freezer, like I said, for about 2 hours, and then I'll bring you back and bake off a batch of these for you and show you how delicious they are straight from the oven. And then I'm also going to show you how I store part of the cookie dough for a later date. Okay? I'll bring you back. Okay, here's my cookie dough in the freezer. You don't need to cover it or anything at this point. We're going to freeze these for a couple of hours until they're frozen solid, and then we're going to bring out a batch and bake a batch off, and then I'm going to show you how to store the rest of them. Okay guys, welcome back. It's been about 2 hours that I put my cookie dough in the freezer, and they are completely frozen. See, totally frozen. And you want to wait until they are completely frozen all the way through. Now the ones that I'm going to bake, I've arranged on this cookie sheet, and I'm going to bake them in a 375-degree oven for about 14 minutes, 14 to 16 minutes. So we're going to put those in the oven and let them bake so I can show you how delicious they bake up. And the ones that I'm going to put up in my freezer for a later date, I put in quart size freezer Ziploc bags. And then you can see over here I have the date, what kind of cookie it is, the temperature you bake it on, and for approximately how long. So I can just go to my freezer, pop a few of these out onto a cookie sheet, totally frozen, you don't have to defrost them or anything, put them in your preheated oven and let them bake. Now I will say, because they are frozen, you do need to give them an extra minute or two from whatever time is on whatever cookie dough recipe you choose. But they bake up so beautifully, and I think they taste better. I read this tip in a cookbook quite a while back, and I've been doing it ever since, and I love it. And I love having a way that I can keep things on hand, so when I need something in a pinch or really quickly, like I said, for when my kids bring someone home from school, have friends over, or we have friends or family who show up and I don't have time to bake something special, I have it in the freezer. All I have to do is just pop it in the oven and it tastes amazing. Another thing that's really good to do this with are scones and biscuits. They freeze beautifully, and then you can bake them up and they're totally fresh and absolutely delicious. You can keep them in the freezer for about 6 months without compromising the quality. And the other thing I wanted to tell you was, I was mistaken on the recipe that I gave you for the chocolate chip cookies. I thought I got 30 the last time I made them, but this time I counted them and I got exactly 2 dozen. So it was with this cookie scoop. It's an average size cookie scoop. It's not an ice cream scoop. It's labeled a cookie scoop. So it's your average cookie scoop. And with that recipe, I got 2 dozen exactly. So I'm going to put these in the oven for you, show you how delicious and beautiful they bake up, and I'll bring you right back. Okay guys, my cookies took exactly 15 minutes to bake, and I want to show you how delicious. After I took them out of the oven, I let them sit on the cookie sheet for about 3 minutes. So you want to take them out just as they're starting to turn golden brown, and then take them out of the oven, let them sit on a cooling rack on the cookie sheet for about 3 minutes. See how beautiful? Perfect. See? Isn't that beautiful? Still warm. Gooey from the oven. They're a tiny bit crispy on the outside, chewy in the middle. Absolutely delicious. And when you make these, you gotta be careful to watch out for Cookie Monsters. I just had one before I put them in the oven swoop through my kitchen and steal a whole ball of frozen cookie dough. So it is addicting, they're delicious, and they're just fun to make, and it's great to have them on hand. They're absolutely delicious. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with me. I hope you'll give this recipe a try, and like I said, you can do this with just about any cookie recipe. I've done it with tons of success with chocolate chip, oatmeal raisin, peanut butter, monster cookies, sugar cookies. Just putting them in the freezer and letting them chill, it just does something to the cookie. Even my husband, who's not a huge sweets eater, commented how good that these cookies are and how much he enjoys them. He said he could eat the whole pan. So I hope you'll give it a try. Thanks so much for spending part of your day with me, and take a cookie break. So good.